and my friends were all paddleboarding, and they said, come and give it a go. And I said, oh, I like this, and I bought a hardboard. I did the sprint race and missed out on getting through to the second round on the 200-metre sprint by, I think it was 0.06 of a second or something. I still can't really believe it. I kind of a bit shocked. I'm so happy and so pleased. I'm hopeful that it gets into the Olympics at some stage. I think it would be great if it did grow. I'd love to see more people kind of going, oh, let's have a race, and push themselves a little bit.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Sportscast Jersey. Today we are joined by paddle boarder Verity Thomas. How are you doing, Verity?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Yeah, not bad, thanks. Not bad. Before we come into the paddle boarding itself, I always tend to start the podcast with the same sort of question, and that is the question of: have you always been sporty since a child growing up?
No, well, I wouldn't say I was sporty. I've always loved the water. My mum used to take us down the beach and I'd just be in the water the whole time. But I wouldn't say I was sporty as such. I did the usual kind of sports at school, netball, athletics, stuff like that. But yeah, I've always been a bit of a water baby.
Yeah. How important is that? Obviously, we'll come on to paddleboarding throughout the podcast, but obviously being in the water and from Jersey and what have you, and how important is that side of things for islanders to be comfortable around the water from a young age as well?
I think it's super important. I think if you live on an island and you're surrounded by water, you need to learn to swim. I think, I was thrown into swimming lessons with Sally Minty at a really young age. I think I was about 2. And I used to sit on the side of the pool, and Sally used to say to my mum, she'll get in the water when she's ready. And once I was in, that was it. There was no getting me out. So, but I do think that, everybody living on an island should be learning to swim, because it is important. And it's not just about kind of the water safety, but it's about having fun on the beach as well.
Yeah, totally. I agree. Right, paddleboarding. Obviously it's become a bit of a trend, a craze, a enjoyable thing for a lot of people in recent years. But when did you first get introduced to paddleboarding itself on a social level?
I think it was 2012. I had a group of friends that were already kind of paddling socially, and I'd had my boy in 2011, and I'd been surfing. I'd learned to surf in about 2008, and then after that, after having my boy, the core was kind of gone, and I wanted to do something to get my fitness back. And my friends were all paddleboarding, and they said, come and give it a go. And I said, oh, I like this, and I bought a hardboard. I didn't buy an inflatable, but I bought a hardboard just for social kind of paddling around. And they said, oh, you should come try some racing. I was like, no, I'm fine with just cruising. I don't want to race. I'm not interested in the racing side of it. So yeah, that was about 2012, I think.
Did the surfing, being obviously doing surfing beforehand, that help you when you first started paddleboarding, I'd guess?
Maybe. I'm not. There is a kind of transition towards it, because you can obviously learn to sup surf as well. So there's kind of the racing side on longboards, and then there's the surfing side that you can learn to surf them as well. So I suppose I had a bit of water knowledge, but I wouldn't say necessarily that surfing helps with paddleboarding that much. Maybe a little bit with balance.
Yeah.
But I think that paddleboarding is probably slightly easier than learning to surf because the boards are bigger.
Yeah. Were you a natural from the start then when you first got on that very first time?
I don't know if I would call it natural, but I didn't fall in much.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Um, when obviously you mentioned just before they were encouraging you to go into competitions, and when did you first kind of think, okay, let's have a look into this?
Well, there was a group of kind of guys. There weren't that many girls doing it. And they were running kind of just get together races. A group of friends of mine, and they said that was 2000, I think 2012, 2013. They were kind of doing that then. And I wasn't overly interested. But then in 2000, and I think it was 2014, 2013, 2014, I said, oh, come on then, I'll give one race a go. And I came second in the ladies, from following all the men around the course. It was down at Green Island. And I thought, oh, actually, this was actually quite fun. And it was also a kind of social, there was a social side to it as well, because it wasn't just a group of mates cruising around. There was kind of a little bit of competitiveness there. But at the same time, there was we'd go for a cup of tea afterwards and catch up and things. So there was still the social side of it. So that was kind of how I got into the racing locally. And there was quite a good group of people that actually did racing locally back then.
Yeah, explain as well in terms of the races. There's different sorts of races and competition as well. Can you explain a bit more for those who might not know the different sides of racing and different kind of how do you say it, styles of race, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of touched on the kind of that you can surf them and things. There's all sorts of things, all sorts of different races. There's like long distance, there's ultra long distance. So ultras would be, like 50K plus over days or, non-stop. There's downwind races. So what that is you basically go from point to point. You choose a day where it's, primarily over here, we get westerly winds. So we would do kind of either a south coast or a north coast, and you'd go kind of launch from one place and go with the wind and the swell, and then kind of beach at the other end, kind of thing. We don't do those as races over here as such, but they do them in all sorts of places around the world and exotic places. France are really big on the downwind racing. That's kind of, they do like the 15, 20K downwind races. And then you've got kind of the shorter courses. You can do time trials, flat water, 5K, 10K, rivers if there's rivers, and go down kind of rapids and things like that. I haven't done any of that. Obviously, Jersey doesn't have any rivers, so I haven't really got into that side of it. There's white water as well that you can do, but there's technical races, and then right at the other end of the scale, there's like a 200-meter sprint race, which is kind of what I've ended up going into. I enjoy that fast-paced, get it over and done with quickly kind of racing, and the technical stuff is I really enjoy, because it's anybody's game when it's the technical racing. In my eyes, you make one mistake and you go from first potentially to last. So that makes it exciting.
Nah, it's really interesting. Like when you look into paddleboarding, probably from the outside, you don't realize how fast the opportunities can be in terms of competition and races. So, no, it's really good insight. And I want to go into obviously in all sport there's injuries. You entered a competition in Poland. Just talk us through what happened over there. Obviously, it was a big blow for you. And how you kind of reacted to that in terms of rehab and how mentally tough it all was.
Yeah, that was, I mean, 2022, that was a tough year. I started training kind of in the gym in 2019 with the Sports Foundation, the Jersey Sport Foundation. And so I was getting strong for paddleboard racing. And we'd worked really hard to get my strength up and get me ready for Poland. That was kind of the aim. The year went really well up until Poland. In the August, I had a phone call just before I left to go to Poland to tell me that the Sports Foundation had no funding anymore, and that they were closed and not to come up to the gym anymore. That was pretty much a week before I went out to Poland. I flew out to Poland on a bit of a down, to be fair. I trained really hard. I was really kind of ready for it. I thought, this is my moment. And I did the sprint race and missed out on getting through to the second round on the 200-meter sprint by, I think it was 0.06 of a second or something. It was absolutely ridiculous. I just remember getting off the water and going up to my friend, and she said, "Oh, how did you do?" And I just burst into tears, and I was like, "I didn't get through." I was sixth, and the top 5 went through, and I was absolutely gutted. I had a bit of a niggle in my shoulder because I'd had an injury in 2016 from that, and I thought, you know what, I'll, put it behind me, focus on the technical. I went and did the technical. I think it was 2 days later. I had a day off in between. And I felt really good. I felt really strong. And I was in 4th place, and the top 4 went through to the next round. And I kind of had a little look behind me to see where 5th place was. And I was like, oh, nowhere near me.
Yeah.
So I kind of jumped off the board or walked off the board, stepped off the board, and didn't really run across the finish line. I just kind of jogged up the beach, and I hit this bank of soft sand, and I just felt my calf go bang, and I was like, oh God. And I actually hopped over the finish line, and one of the French paddlers who'd finished in 3rd came running over to me and said, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I don't know what's happened, but I can't walk." And yeah, I'd done a torn my left calf, and I got back here, and I went to the hospital, I think the day after. I'd spent kind of a week over there hobbling around whilst the rest of the competition went on. And yeah, I ended up, I think I went through the hospital for physio there. And I also went to performance physio and paid privately to have some physio with Fiona. I was kind of determined. I thought at one point I thought I'd never walk again. That's how dramatic I was. Looking back now, I was like, it's the worst pain I've ever had. So I honestly had no idea what the future was gonna look like. So I did everything I possibly could. I paid quite a lot of money to go and get private rehab, and worked really, really hard on that. And I still do the exercises that I was told by the hospital and by Fiona to do as part of my warm-up in the gym. Because it's super important that I make sure that it's not just my upper body that's strong. I need to make sure that everything is, everything is as strong and as good as it can be. But I've really kind of focused on recovery. That's been a really important kind of lesson that I've learned, is that you can be as fit as you want, and something like this can happen, but you need to focus on recovery and have rest days and not overtrain. And, I used to feel like I did something every day. I did, I'd cycle to work and back pretty much every day. I'd be in the gym 3 times a week. I'd be on the water 3 times a week. I'd go running in the dark at night around the lanes where I live, probably 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And, Strava told me I was doing great.
Yeah.
Looking back now, I know I wasn't doing so great. I was probably overtraining. And that's probably what caused the injury.
Yeah.
Or the fact that I wanted it so badly. I wanted to win that race so bad last year that my muscles were probably just tense. And they just had enough.
Yeah. Yeah. How tough was, obviously you talked about the rehab there, and how tough was it being away from competing for a large amount of time?
Yeah, after Poland, I had, I think, 2 or 3 races in the diary. And my son wanted to come away to the UK to one of them. And it was really, really, I was so upset that I couldn't go, for starters. And secondly, I couldn't drive. So I couldn't even go and be a support and take him for him to race. Yeah, it was tough watching all of my friends from the UK that were still racing, still competing. It was really tough to watch them kind of progress and me be sat at home, with my leg up, not able to do anything. It was pretty difficult to watch everybody kind of carry on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought the start of the year, I'll start seeing where I'm at, I suppose, and take it from there and take it easy.
Yeah, definitely. And what a comeback it was. Obviously, just come back from Thailand. Um, let's go through that week. Obviously, finished on such a high. But how are you going into it, feeling mentally and physically as well? Were you ready for it?
I didn't feel ready for it, to be honest. Before I went out there, I was a bit like, I haven't done much training. I haven't done as much training as. So I was very much looking at the fact that I hadn't done as much training as I had in Poland, or for Poland, I should say, in the lead up. And I was worried that I was under training and that I wasn't ready. I'd gone into this year with a bit of an attitude of, I'm going to do new things. I'm going to try some new stuff. My friend made me sign up, or didn't make me, but encouraged me to sign up for the try with her over here in June. So we started doing the training in the January, February time. And that was great. So that, whilst I wasn't training for the paddleboarding, I was doing a little bit of running, cycling, swimming, towards that. So that, and then I did the swim run in September. So I was still doing a little bit of training, but I felt really undertrained for stand-up paddle racing.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh God, if I left it too late, I got to October time and I was like, I really need to get back in the gym, and get back on the water. And then we had obviously quite a lot of wind. So to get back on the water, I was like having to kind of look at it and go, right, well, where can I go that I'm not going to get blown to France or something. So I did feel rather undertrained going into it. But then I went out there with the kind of mindset of, 2023, new year, have fun. You've not done much training towards the actual stand-up paddleboard racing as such, but you have done some training on other stuff. So just see where it goes and kind of relax. And I went out there a week before the competition started because I knew that it was going to be hot. I knew that I needed to get acclimatized to the the temperature and also the time zone difference. They're 7 hours ahead. And I didn't want to be kind of falling asleep on the start line, but I also didn't want to be not sleeping the night before the race as well. So I kind of was very relaxed about it, but went out knowing that I had a week to kind of get myself sorted. I was renting a board out there as well. So I thought, this could be interesting. I've never tried this board before. We'll have to see how that goes. But I was very much like, what will be, will be.
Yeah.
I'm relaxed. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to enjoy it and, enjoy the process and see where it takes me.
Yeah. And that worked clearly especially in the technical race. Third place finish. How pleased and proud are you of that and just that achievement?
I still can't really believe it. I kind of a bit shocked. I'm so happy and so pleased. And I've been speaking to my friends since saying, do I retire on that? Or do I think, actually, maybe I should go for gold next year? And I'm still really undecided. I have no idea. Because I know that there are improvements that I could make. But as I say, the technical racing is anybody's. I could come in last next year and because I could fall in or something. But I was confident going into the technical race that I had the skills, not necessarily the speed, because I know that some of the girls are quicker than me on the kind of sprint, because the technical race was a kilometre course. And so it was pretty much, I think there were 5 boy turns, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And so you're looking at, it was 2 laps. So you're looking at an 100-metre sprint to a boy turn, a 100-metre sprint to a boy turn. So I may not have been the fastest at sprinting, but the technical kind of boy turns, I definitely took advantage of my skill there.
Yeah. Amazing, and such an amazing achievement. Is that the pinnacle or the best so far that in your achievements wise? Obviously, you've done big challenges as well with the paddleboard. Is that the top of the list?
Yeah, I think so. It's run by the International Canoe Federation, and so it's an international, worldwide event. There were, I think they said, about 1,100 people at the event. I mean, it was absolutely huge, much bigger than Poland was last year. I think there was only about 500 people in Poland last year. I think the hot weather of Thailand obviously attracted a few more. So that's definitely the biggest event that I have kind of ever entered into. And I quite like the going through the rounds. So some of the ultra distance races and stuff like that, it's a point to point and you slog it out and the first one over the line is the winner. But it's quite nice to know that, you do a short course, and you have to come in a top 3 to get into the next round. And I quite like having those kind of short, sharp events. But yeah, it's by far the biggest thing I've ever kind of done, and probably my best result ever as well. I mean, I have got on the podium previously, but not in an international event, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Going on to the sport now, how big is the future? Obviously, I've seen in other interviews you're talking about your boy and where he could go in the future. Olympics have been kind of thrown into the hat for the sport as well. How far can the sport go now?
I think I'm hopeful that it gets into the Olympics at some stage. I know that there's the International Surfing Association, so the ISA, they kind of they got surfing into the Olympics. And there is a push for the stand-up paddleboarding to go into the Olympics at some point, and they didn't accept it for the 2028, but it's under review for 2032. So 2032, that's not very long away. That's 9 years, and there are teenagers. They'll be at their peak in 2032. That's the kind of 12 to 15-year-olds now. They'll be at their peak in that time. So it'd be great to kind of get the sport pushed forward in that sense. But it's really difficult because there are so many different disciplines that you can do in SUP racing, that what the actual Olympics looks like, whether it's the sprints, the technical courses, the distance stuff, the downwinding, the surfing, there's so much that you can do that actually, until it's actually into the Olympics, nobody actually knows what that looks like. So it's a really difficult question to know where it could slot in. They may say, well, actually, the racing side of it's not going to be in the Olympics, but we'll add the surfing in with the longboarding and the shortboarding, or they may say, well, actually, it fits better with the kind of canoe side of things, where they're doing a 200-meter and 500-meter sprint on a sprint lake and just straight hand, straight down the line. But until they say, yes, it's accepted as an Olympic sport, it's really difficult to know where that's actually going to go.
Yeah. I think it's good that there's a lot of options where it could go. So the channels are large and varied as well. On Ireland, how can people get involved in the sport as well, and how much would you like to see it grow here in Jersey?
I'd love to see the racing side of it grow. I mean, during the COVID lockdown, I think pretty much every single person on the island went and bought an inflatable paddleboard. I know gone paddling up in St Brelard, and most of the kind of retail surf shops and things that had paddleboards in ran out of stock very quickly, and everybody seemed to be on a paddleboard on the water. Which is great. And I think, the more people that paddleboard, the better. Obviously, knowing the tides and things like that is a bonus, because we want people to be safe whilst doing it. But the racing side of it hasn't really grown that much. And I don't really know why that is. I think it would be great if it did grow. I'd love to see more people kind of going, oh, let's have a race, and push themselves a little bit. But maybe that's just because I'm really competitive, and I want people to race against. I don't know.
No, I agree. And I think the more that the message goes out that there is this option that you can race, and that there is a competitive side as well as the social side, I think more and more people will kind of join up and get involved in the sport in that way. And the final question from me today: future for you. Obviously you touched on it before. You're not sure what really your decision is in terms of retirement, go again. But how exciting is it for you to know that there is a possibility of going again, and also in the future, when you do retire, you can stick around the sport because your son is so involved as well?
Yeah, I mean, going forward, I don't know, I'm really torn, because I'm so competitive, I want to go and get that gold. As much as I was ecstatic that I got the bronze, I'm like, could I get that gold? And so I am toying with it, but it's also, it's a 2-week, it's a training, obviously, all the way through. and it's 2 weeks. It's 4 days in November next year, but it would be like a 2-week trip to Florida. So I have to then look at the finances and make sure that I can afford to do that. But yeah, it is on the cards. It is something that I don't quite feel ready to retire just yet, but I am wondering whether I move across to kind of do coastal rowing or something, because I did that this summer as well. I started with the Project Gold team, and they've let me kind of carry on training with them as well. So it is, I'm wondering if I can do both, but that might be, again, kind of giving myself a bit too much to do, if that makes sense. But yeah, even if I did retire, and my son is now super keen on, racing, we've got a clinic booked for him to go to Germany and do some training with kids in Easter. And he's really wanting to kind of get into the racing as well. But I also want to make it fun for him. I don't want to be that pushy parent that, you must do this, you must do. I mean, I enjoy the racing. I find it fun.
Yeah.
And that's why I race. And I know that racing isn't for everybody. So, but yeah, if he wants to do the racing, then I'll still be around helping him. I mean, he's got a much better technique than I have already. He just doesn't have the speed or the kind of strength yet. But yeah, give it a few years and he'll be leaving me behind. And it might be at that point that I retire.
Yeah, amazing. Good luck with everything that you're doing in the future. If you carry on, if you're going to a new sport, whatever you do, good luck in the future.
Thank you.
Brilliant. That was a great episode. Thank you for all who has watched and listened to this episode. Another episode of Sportscast Jersey is coming soon.